Thank you for joining me on this, my first video MP report, and I'm pleased today to be joined and to be interviewing one of my colleagues in Ottawa, the very dynamic Member of Parliament for Vancouver East, who has served here for quite a number of years, certainly longer than I have, and came to politics out of a municipal political background, where you did a lot of community organizing and activism before you got to Ottawa. Libby Davies is the House leader for our caucus in Ottawa, and also a deputy leader, so a very important person in my life down here as I work to serve the people of Sault Ste. Marie and region. So Libby, maybe you can share with us a bit of your background to begin with.
Well, first off, we're both part of an awesome caucus, and your work in our caucus is just legendary, what you've done around social justice and anti-poverty issues, and so Tony Martin as part of the NDP caucus is like a power player there. So but I think we have similar backgrounds. I have a background like you in working for social justice, working in a low-income community in the downtown east side of Vancouver, part of the riding that I now represent, and being a city councillor. And it kind of gave me, I think like you and the work that you do, a real grassroots approach. It's like, to me, it's about working with people and helping people find their own voice and bring forward their own issues. And so I see myself as a connector, as a facilitator, as someone who can raise a bit of hell here in Ottawa. And I think we do that together, taking on the Conservatives and really pushing an agenda based on social justice and saying that, you know, in a country as wealthy as Canada, why are people still living in poverty? Yeah,
well, certainly when you look at the whole issue of social justice, the central core is poverty. And as I've traveled the country with the HUMA committee, who is doing a study on poverty, to table a report in the House calling for action by the federal government on some of these issues, the first and primary thing that comes up over and over again is the issue of housing. You know, how central housing is to anybody having the potential to participate in their community, to go out and get work, and the fact that we have so little of it, at least affordable housing, appropriate housing. So I know that you've done a lot of work. I mean, before I got here, you were carrying this can and working on poverty issues and housing, and you've now got an initiative before the House that we're working on in some part together, but housing is a huge issue.
Well, and your constituents should know that your continual pushing to get those hearings across Canada were really, really important. I mean, it's not easy to get a committee to kind of move and to do something, but to hold those anti-poverty hearings and actually hear in local communities what's going on, because we can be so removed from all of that in Ottawa. So what you accomplished there, Tony, was incredible. And I know you told me that right across Canada, people kept saying over and over again that the need for a safe, affordable, appropriate, accessible housing is a core human right. It's, you know, if you don't have that, what else can you do? So, you know, I do have a bill in Parliament, Bill C-304, and it's had tremendous support across the country. I know folks in the Soo have been supporting it right across the country. So we're hoping very much we get this bill through.
Yeah, and I know that in different parts of the country, housing presents itself with different characteristics. The needs are different, and the approaches that communities and provincial governments, for the most part now, where there's any investment in housing, are doing some good things. But the call is for leadership from the federal government. I mean, there used to be a national housing program, a national housing strategy in this country back in the 80s, where we were building, co-ops and not-for-profits. And I know in my own community back in the early 90s, when we were government in Ontario, and I was part of that government, we built at least a half a dozen new complexes, with maybe 30 to 50 units in each, some co-ops, some not-for-profit, but all of them, affordable with subsidy, and in fact with money flowing from the different senior levels of government for maintenance and management. But your bill now that you've introduced, which I think is critical, which I think will play a huge part in any anti-poverty strategy coming out of the federal government, is well on its way. But so maybe you can talk a bit about your work around that and where it's at and what the next steps might be.
Well, I have a similar experience of knowing what those housing programs were like and how good they were. I used to be on city council at the time, and we built fantastic housing buildings, seniors, families, co-ops, with those federal dollars, because we had a federal housing program. And then in the 90s, it was completely eviscerated. That was part of all of the cutbacks, that Paul Martin made of supposedly eliminating the deficit. And I always say they did that on the backs of poor people, and cutting out those housing programs has had a huge impact. That's why we see so much homelessness now, and people literally destitute on the street. So this bill is very straightforward. It calls for a national housing strategy. It says to the federal government, you get back at the table, pull together the provinces, the territories, First Nations, municipalities, civil society, and develop a national housing program based on targets and deadlines and outcomes, similar to what you're doing on a poverty reduction program. And why can't we do that? Why can't we set those clear targets and say that every Canadian has the right to be housed? So the bill has gone through committee. It's passed second reading, gone through committee. It's now on its way back into the House for what we call report stage and third reading. I'd really encourage people to write their MP or other MPs, because we really want to get some of the Conservatives supporting this. I cannot understand why they wouldn't support this bill. So it's had tremendous support from the faith communities, municipalities, First Nations, civil society organizations. So we want to get this bill through.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think you made a critical point just a couple of minutes ago about government can do this. Government makes choices all the time about what its priorities will be. We saw some of those in the budget that we've just seen introduced into Parliament here, and that we will vote on soon in the House. Back in the mid-90s, the Liberal government of the day made choices. They decided to fight the deficit and reduce the debt, as you said, on the backs of the poor. They got rid of the housing strategy. They got rid of the Canada Assistance Plan. And then they moved on to actually deliver billions of dollars in corporate tax breaks to companies that really didn't need it. And now we have a government that's actually picking up on that platform and delivering yet further billions of dollars in yet to come reductions in corporate tax. Those billions of dollars could be used very effectively and more effectively to serve our communities by building affordable new housing for people, so that then from there they can get on to participating in the way that we know they want to in the life of their community and in the economy. So Libby, I want to thank you again for being the champion that you've always been, for being the role model for me here when I came, in terms of how you get things done, and for all the good work. And I look forward to working with you. Your committee, your bill came before our committee. We'll work together to get it through and to work with you in the House to see it be
support on this
successful.
Bill has been really critical. Tony, so thank you for what you do, and your constituents should be very proud that you're their member of Parliament, because you're a fighter all the way.
Thank you, and it's been my pleasure to have you as my first guest on my first MP video report, and we're hoping that we'll have more of these as we go forward, and I think it's a great opportunity to communicate, and of course that's a big part of what we do as politicians representing our constituents, is to communicate their voice, to be their voice in Ottawa, to let Ottawa know what it is that's important to them and what the priorities are that we should be making choices about down here with the resources that we have. So thank you.
Tony.
Yeah.